Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figure It Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today we're going to be talking about our friend, the NES, one of history's most successful and well-known video game consoles, and specifically a new device for it called the Ninten-Drawer. Before we do that, though, if you guys could do me a favor, please like this video, comment down below, subscribe if you've never done that before, as well as check out all my social media stuff in the description. I've got Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, Spreadshirt, my travel channel. I appreciate the support on all those platforms. Thank you so much for watching. Let's get on with it. So, yes, we're going to be talking about the NES, and again, the Ninten-Drawer. Now, full disclosure on this was sent to me for free for the purposes of review by its creators, which is actually two people. One is a guy named Blue Shell, who actually did the 3D printing modeling work on it, as well as a buddy of mine named Rocker Gaming, who is also a YouTuber, I'm sure a lot of you guys know. He actually designed the board for this, and the two of them worked in conjunction to make these units. I'll put links in the description as to where to get it. You can actually buy it from either one of them. It supports both. I know, at least I know Rocker Gaming personally. He's a very nice guy. Also lives out here in Chicago, so represent. And he was cool enough to just hit me up and be like, "Yo, do you want to do one? Do you want one of these? You want to do a video on it? Would you be interested?" I'm like, "That sounds awesome, right up my alley." It's very 2011. So basically, yeah, this kind of is going to feel like 2011 more than my channel normally does. This addresses an age-old problem with the NES. So we have two NESs set up here for a very specific purpose. Now, if you know the NES at all, you probably know the most age-old problem with it, which is it's very hard to get the games to actually work. I actually was doing videos about this like literally in 2011, addressing the various problems. Now, at the core of it, the issue was when Nintendo decided to bring the Famicom over to North America, they wanted to give it a more mature look because that was the video game crash era, and they were trying to not appear to be like a toy. So they wanted to be a fancy piece of technology. And what was the most fancy piece of technology at the time? VCRs. And with VCRs, you just, kind of push a cassette into, VHS into the VCR, and then they would go in and kind of sit down. So they essentially designed the NES around that concept. This is an example of a 72-pin loading tray, an original one, for the NES. So I'm sure you guys know very well, you would take your game, you would put it in like this, and then you would push it down and attempt to turn on the system. The problem is, putting a game in at that particular angle did not make for a very solid connection. In fact, doing so would actually bend the pins inside what is known as the 72-pin connector, and over time, no matter what you did, even if you kept it perfectly clean, it would eventually fail. And a lot of time, you didn't keep it perfectly clean. Because the connection was so unreliable, a lot of people really took to the concept of blowing in the cartridge to, make it work, which you really shouldn't do. It actually gets the moisture from your breath onto the pins, corroding it, and actually makes it worse. So yeah, it's a problem that was very, very bad. And if you're like, well, I used to blow in it and it would work sometimes, yeah, because you were retrying it. Eventually you're gonna get it, but yeah, that really wasn't good. There were little tricks to try and fix this. Like I said, you could clean it, which was nice. You could actually, there used to be videos people would go in and take screwdrivers and try to bend the pins back. Back in the day, you could also even replace the 72-pin connector with a new 72-pin connector. It was still the original same problem, it's just that they were mass-producing new 72-pin connectors. There were also things like disabling what's known as the 10NES chip. The Famicom, the Japanese version of this system, has 60 pins, whereas the NES has 72. The additional 12 actually didn't serve much of a purpose other than anti-piracy measures and import prevention. So there's a little chip inside the NES you can actually disconnect or disable, and if you do that, it disables those particular 12 pins. And the reason that matters is that if you do that, the system was more likely to work. If you ever turned on an NES and the game was just blinking and the system was just blinking, that's because the 72-pin connector was not making connection with those 12 pins. So by disabling that, it increased the probability of it working. But these are all the little fixes we were all trying to do a decade plus ago. But why did we have to do that? Why can't we just take our game right here in a stock NES, just put it into the system, turn it on, and play it? Why can't we do that? Because it never works. That's why. This one, actually, I did all the tricks. As you can see, it's not freaking out. It's not blinking. You can see the screen. I'm going to turn it off just so the coloring the lighting is better. But you can see right there, it wasn't blinking, but it still wasn't working. And that means I disabled the 10 NES chip, as I just discussed. I've cleaned it. I replaced the 72-pin connector, and still that. Now, I could put that in there like 40 times. It's never going to work. There's a reason for that. That 72 pins design is just really bad. There was eventually a solution to this. And aside from like emulation or aftermarket systems like the Retro AVS, which is a system I actually love, a lot of people decided, wouldn't it be cool to replace the 72-pin connector with a better design? And that did happen. It's called the Blinking Light Win. And I actually did a video on that years ago. This system right here has the Blinking Light Win. The Blinking Light Win is basically a complete replacement for this module, including the actual 72-pin connection, therefore making a straight connection all the way through the system and being vastly more reliable. I never had any problems with it, except two. One, it is kind of known for its death grip. Anybody who has ever used the Blinking Light Win will tell you it is very difficult to remove the cartridges from the system. Now, this was by choice. It was because they wanted to ensure a solid connection, but it was so solid to the point where it irritated people. And I know a lot of people are like, I don't even want to put games in there because I'm afraid it's going to damage them because of how hard it is to remove. Now, I can't speak to that personally. I never had that issue. But I will say, yeah, getting games out of there was really hard. And the other problem, the Blinking Light Win has not been produced for a very long time. Now, the reason I preamble all of that is that's what the Ninten-Drawer does. It effectively is the Blinking Light Win with upgrades. I do know that it disables the 10 NES chip enough that carts like pirate carts, things like that should work, but very specifically imports. PAL games will work. European exclusive games will work with this, even if you haven't disabled the 10 NES chip. If you have disabled the 10 NES chip, this will still work regardless. It does not make a difference. And it gives you that solid connection. But it also addresses the death grip issue in a very creative way. If you take the cartridge, I'm going to show you this while it's still out, you can ply it in there, it mounts in, it makes for a nice solid connection, but check this out. If you were to remove it, you can actually see this flex cable back here. So the board actually comes with it, and it's the plastic that is 3D printed plastic by Blue Shell actually impacts with this plastic, causing it a point where, you know, the cartridge can't come out any further unless you pull it out properly, which is relatively easy to do. Boom. Now, granted, it's easy to do it while I'm holding the unit. I'm going to try it when it's actually installed in the system. Keep in mind, obviously, this thing will be screwed in. You know, it'll be easier to do. But point is, this is not the horrible death grip that the original was. Or I should say the original, the Blinking Light Win. See? Easy enough. It just needs enough resistance. The other thing that's cool about it is it has this little plastic bit here in the front that you can actually customize. The default one is this black piece of plastic, but you can actually pop this out relatively simply. And boom, comes out. And he gave me a spare one. This one actually says, do not press down, and you can install this instead. That way anybody who's looking at the NES, when they go to put a game in, they don't try to just push the cart down because they can't do that. Personally, I feel this is a little like insulting to the intelligence, at least of the person who bought it or would be using it. This is really only there in case you have like a dumb cousin who comes over and is like, I remember Nintendo, and pushes it down and breaks it. This is for your dumb cousin. This is not for you who would be watching this video and is actually like, I'm smart enough to know not to push down the thing that's designed not to be pushed down. But yes, one thing I'd like to add about this is the question of Game Genie support. Long story short, don't try it. It's not officially supported. The slightly longer answer is the Game Genie uses thicker pins than NES cartridges do, and there's a long story behind that, but basically don't try this because it will actually damage the device, the Ninten-Drawer, because they more or less designed it based on the Model 2, which was a more reliable version of the system, and Nintendo effectively kind of blocked out the Game Genie on that device. If you have the original spacer for the Game Genie, which is exceedingly rare, then you can use it. But yeah, don't try to just go ahead and stick a stock version of it in there because you will probably cause some damage. They are working on an update or a fix to this in some regard, but I don't pretend to know what that would even be, but that's just a heads up. That's pretty much all there is to say on it without actually using it. So in order to install the Ninten-Drawer, you obviously have to take the NES apart. I've gone ahead and done a couple of steps, but I'm going to tell you what I did. If you take your NES, you look at the bottom, you will see there are 6 Phillips head screw points. You're obviously going to go ahead and remove those. Like I said, just a basic Phillips head screwdriver. I have an entire breakdown of an NES, I made years ago on my channel. You can watch if you want to see more of a deep dive, but really it's not that complicated. Once you remove that, the lid pops off just like this. Now, underneath, normally there will be an RF shield right here, which is just like a silver piece of metal that's over this. You'll see screw points around the side. Again, these are all Phillips head. You're just going to want to remove them and take that off. And then you'll get down to this, the original 72-pin design. I have not removed this yet, obviously. You can see here that we have screws, brass ones on the sides back here. There's 4 of them, and then you have 2 silver ones. The 2 silver ones are longer, that's why they're different. Go ahead and remove those as well. Once you have those screws removed, you actually aren't quite done. You also have to get a couple of screws out over here. There's one there, and there's one there. You're going to need that because you need to be able to lift the board, so go ahead and remove those as well. Once those 2 screws are removed, it's time to kind of lift up the board, which is relatively simple. It just kind of comes up like this. We're not going to disconnect the cabling. It's unnecessary. We're basically just going to kind of lift this part up here, and we'll remove the 72-pin connector, which basically just kind of slides, or well, this is the loading tray, but this just kind of slides off, as you can see. And then this, everybody, is the source of the problem, the 72-pin connector. In order to remove this, you basically just kind of, well, that's it. You just pull it. And we're going to replace it with this. Before I do that, though, I am going to go ahead and clean this connection using some Q-tips and just kind of getting the dust off there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, I think this is clean enough, so we're going to go ahead and install the Ninten-Drawer. So for doing this, the simplest way is to like lift up the board like this. Not so much the RF shield beneath it. And you'll see there is basically what it looks like a cartridge slot right there. And you just kind of connect it in here like this. Looking at see there at the bottom right there, push that in, and that's pretty much it. And then it is connected to the board and has replaced it. So then you just kind of put this whole thing back together, which means just putting it through the RF shield there, and then I mean that's it. We're basically done. So at this point I'm just going to go ahead and reattach the lid. If you have the RF shield, if you want to put that back in there, that's obviously a choice, but yeah, we want to mount the screws. Now, this version of it only uses 4 screws instead of the original mount using 6. So basically, you just take the 4 brass ones and put them here. There's one there, there, and yeah, right back there. So you don't need those silver ones anymore. You should obviously put the screws back in down over there. And if you have the RF shield and you want to put that back on, you can. It's unnecessary, but that's up to you unless you're actually using RF, which is silly in this year. But anyway, so it's all installed. So we're going to go ahead and put the lid back on it and go ahead and try it out. Before we do that, though, I do want to point out just a couple of things. One, when it comes to your game cartridges, anytime you're going back and revisiting them, make sure you clean them. The reason for that should be relatively obvious, but in case it isn't, your cartridges are going to get dirty over the course of time. The pins are going to get a little bit corroded, and if you're putting them into a brand new connector, you're essentially transferring that dirt with you. So you don't want to do that. So how to clean it? A lot of people swear by rubbing alcohol. The back of the cartridge actually specifically says not to do that. The reason you don't use rubbing alcohol is because even though to the human eye, when you just put out some rubbing alcohol, it evaporates really quickly, that's actually an incomplete chemical reaction. Thus, it leaves a film there, hence it gets dirty. Don't do that. I personally use Windex, which a lot of people don't like either, but there is no perfect solution. So I perfectly, and solution being a double meaning, I guess. But yeah, anyway, I personally use Windex, so I take Q-tips, Windex, spray it on there. You just kind of clean it one side, clean the other side, then go ahead and dry it, and then give it a second, and that's pretty much all there is to it. So that's my recommendation. Now, as for the grip on the Ninten-Drawer, I will freely admit to you that when I was just holding the caddy and putting the cartridge in and out, it was easy enough to get it out, but I admit it required more force than I had anticipated. Not to the blinking light win level, but yeah. However, once you actually install it within the system, you can actually see, like you can see here in this footage, like how the mechanics of that actually works. Once you have the system actually like put back together, it's actually relatively simple. So we're gonna go ahead and try it out. So this is the unit that we took apart, and we're gonna go ahead and put in. So obviously you don't push down anymore, but if we just go ahead and turn it on, boom, absolute first try, the game works. Now granted, it's using our composite, so it still looks like crap, but it doesn't matter. The point is it can actually read and play the games correctly. Instantly, first try. That's what you want. So I want to give a huge shout out here to, of course, Blue Shell and Rocker Gaming for not only making this, but actually sending me one. So I appreciate you guys doing that. There will be links in the description again to those guys if you want to check them out and specifically pick this up. Like I said, if you're into the original NES, you're into the concept of the original hardware, this really is kind of a necessity. I understand people will be like, I want to use an emulator, or I'm going to use an aftermarket system. That's all fine. Those options are perfectly viable. But if you are that guy out there who's like, I want my original 1985 NES to be reliable, this is going to be the best recommendation that you could possibly make. And honestly, it's a simple installation. Like, I know the camera like slowed me down a bit when I was actually filming it, but honestly, if I hadn't been filming it, I could have installed this thing in like 3 minutes. It's not complicated. So yeah, very, very cool. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. As always, if you guys can do me a favor, please like the video, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't done that before, as well as check out all my social media stuff in the description. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, Spreadshirt, Travel Channel. Appreciate the support on all those platforms. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all later.